Alright guys, welcome back, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use the decoder. Now, just by looking at the name, I'm sure you can already figure out what it is. It's basically a tool that's really easy to use, and whenever you have some data and you want to try to decode it, you use this tool. Pretty simple. Now, for those of you who don't know the basics of encoding, or maybe you heard of it before and you aren't really sure the difference between encoding and encryption, let me just give you guys a real quick overview of it. So basically, whenever you have a chunk of data and it needs to be translated into another format, then what you can do is encode it. Now, why would you ever want to take a bunch of data, for example, I'll say Bucky, and we'll just encode this to, let's say, I don't know, base 64. So why would you ever want to take this and translate it to this? Well, different types of systems, just like different people, communicate in different ways. So, if I wanted to talk to some Japanese person, I would need some way to translate my English into Japanese. That's basically the equivalent of what's going on here. Now, the problem with this is that Japanese, it could also be reversed back into English. So that's the problem that people have with encoding. You pretty much have these common algorithms, these common translations that everyone knows. So some websites actually do this for security. I mean, a bunch of websites, they need to translate their information or encode their data so they can either send it over the internet or maybe send it to another system. Whatever, you always need to encode data. You do it all the time. Now, like I said, some developers use this for security, such as for trying to hide passwords, but they don't realize that this is a bad technique because it's really easy. For example, if we cut this and pasted it right here, then we can just say decode as base 64 and we get Bucky again. Alright, so we know what encoding is. What is encryption? I heard about that too. Encryption is kind of the same thing but kind of different. It also is taking a chunk of data and translating it to something else, but these formulas are secret. So every computer system in the world, it knows about encoding. That's how it communicates with each other. Encryption, those formulas are usually only known between two people, usually the server and the client. So if I was trying to pass notes to you in class, then what we could do is we can come up with our own secret formula. So I would write a message and I would write it in, using our formula. You would know how to translate it. I could pass it to you. You could get this scrambled message and you would know how to decrypt it. Now, the cool thing about that is if the teacher ever found us passing notes and he looked at that piece of paper, it would just look all scrambled to him. And as long as our formula was good, he could never decrypt it and figure out what that note said. So that's the difference between encryption. The formulas are secret, and with encoding, these formulas are standard to help computers communicate with each other. Alright, so that was enough talking. Let me just get rid of all this. Alright, so how do we use this in Burp? Well, anytime we have a chunk of data that we think can be decoded, and we already figured out that this isn't actually any encoded string, it's just some random string. It doesn't mean anything cool. But whenever we have something that we want to test, we can just highlight it, right click it, and hit send to decoder. So then we can either just use smart decode, and then Burp is going to try its best to guess. And I'm clicking this and it's not working because, like I said, this isn't actually encoded data. It's just actually a random string. Now, just to show you guys a real quick example, if you can actually find like a million examples online. Just type in like encoded data, whatever. So on the Wikipedia page of base 64, which is one of the dozens, or well, there's probably like hundreds of different encoding schemes, but this is one of the more popular ones. It's basically saying in this example that you can decode and encode again this to this. In other words, you can translate this to this, and then you can translate this back to this, back and forth, using this base 64 algorithm. So I'm just going to copy this, and back in Burp, I'm going to paste it in, and then we know that we can decode this as base 64, and check it out. So it did work. This data did indeed encode and decode back and forth to this base 64 in this plain text. Now I also want to mention that this smart decode right here, it doesn't always work. So it's not your end all and be all. You actually need to cycle through these options a lot of the time. So let me just show you guys an example. Say that we had like a GFT. Well, if I hit smart decode, then it's not going to work because we have a limited amount of data. Burp's looking at this back. Okay, is this it? I don't really know what this is. However, if we just go to something like decode is base 64, we can see that this translates to ham, which may have actually been the string. Maybe this is actually, you know, someone's password, AGFT, or maybe it's ham. So with a limited amount of data, the smart decode doesn't always work, but that's the basics of encoding, which you should never use for, you know, sensitive information, and encryption, which is great whenever you're trying to communicate with someone else and you're trying to keep that info hidden, and also how to use the decoder in Burp Suite. See you next time.